There are whispers buried so deep in time that only the stars remember them. And tonight, we pull back the curtain. Capricorn. The world sees you as calm, collected, ambitious. But the prophecy Nostradamus never dared to say aloud, not in his time, not in his books, speaks of a power so unsettling, so transformative, that it had to be hidden. Until now. He called it the mountain's curse, the destiny carved into the soul of the Capricorn. A soul chosen not for comfort, but for conquest. Not for praise, but for purpose. And beneath your discipline lies something far older than ambition. It is said that Capricorn's soul was born from the silence between Saturn's ticking clock. Not like others, no. You were shaped by time, forged by duty, and wrapped in shadows. Not because you are dark, but because you were meant to carry what no one else could. And here is the truth. The reason the world both respects and fears Capricorn is not because of your strength, but because of how silently you use it. Because behind your quiet gaze is a mind that sees what others deny, and a heart that refuses to be ruled by softness. You've been misunderstood. You've been called cold, too serious, emotionally distant. But Nostradamus knew better. He saw what others couldn't. A lineage of souls who came here not to follow the world, but to reshape it. To hold it together when everything falls apart. And to sacrifice pieces of themselves for a future they may never fully enjoy. This video is not for the faint-hearted. What you're about to hear may challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself or about the Capricorn you love. Because the truth is, your greatest strength is also your most dangerous curse. 15 dark prophecies were written in the margins of forgotten journals. 15 truths Nostradamus uncovered and feared the world was not ready to receive. But you're ready now, aren't you? Let us begin with the first. The Mountain's Shadow. Part 1. The Mountain's Shadow. Nostradamus once wrote of a mountain that existed not in the physical world, but in the soul of a chosen few. A mountain that whispered only to those born under Saturn's watchful eye. A mountain only Capricorn could hear. And Capricorn listens. Even when they don't want to. Even when it hurts. To the outside world, the Capricorn symbol is noble. The goat climbing, ascending higher and higher, alone yet undeterred. But what the world does not see, what it dares not ask, is what the climb costs. This is what Nostradamus feared. Not the mountain itself, but the shadow it casts. Because the truth is this, every Capricorn is haunted. The higher they rise, the darker the silence becomes. Not because they are cursed, but because the path they walk was never meant to be easy. It was meant to break all that is not essential: ego, comfort, distraction, and leave behind only the essence of power. But at what cost? There is a cold truth buried in Capricorn's destiny: the summit they chase is not a place. It's a state of being. And once reached, it offers no parade. No relief. Only silence. And sometimes, regret. Capricorn does not climb for fame or attention. That's not their nature. They climb because their soul demands it. Because something ancient within them believes that stillness equals failure. Because the moment they stop moving, something inside begins to unravel. They may have all the signs of success, wealth, titles, admiration, but behind their calm eyes lies a question that never leaves. Why does it still feel empty? A story from the past. There is an old record preserved by mystics in the south of France. In 1483, a woman named Isabeau, born under the Capricorn sign, was known to walk alone into the hills each night. She was neither noble nor educated. Yet kings sent riders to ask for her visions. She predicted wars. She foretold deaths. And she never once asked for gold. When someone once asked how she knew so much, she simply replied, "I climb a mountain while others sleep. And when I reach the top, I see the storm coming before it arrives." She died young, with no children, no lover. But her name remained written in the private notes of Nostradamus, who referred to her not by title, but as the woman of the mountain's shadow. What he meant by that, we still don't fully understand. But perhaps we're not supposed to. The psychological truth. Capricorn's climb is not literal. It's emotional, psychological, existential. They carry the burden of unspoken expectations, often from childhood. They feel they must achieve something great, even if no one tells them why. They bear responsibility before they understand what it even means. And here lies the prophecy Nostradamus never dared to make public. If Capricorn climbs without remembering why, the mountain becomes a grave. The success becomes meaningless. The strength becomes isolation. The legacy becomes a wound passed on to others. And worst of all, they may not realize it until it's too late. The life lesson. Capricorn's lesson is not just about achievement. It's about intention. It's about choosing not just to rise, but to rise with purpose, with meaning, with heart. The real mountain is inside. And if they're not careful, they will conquer every summit the world offers, only to discover that they've left their soul behind in the valley. The mountain will always be there. But the question is, will you still recognize yourself when you reach the top? That is the first prophecy. And it is why the world fears Capricorn's power. Not because they climb, but because they are willing to climb alone. Part 2, the silence that punishes. There is a silence that follows Capricorn everywhere. It's not the silence of shyness, nor the quiet of submission. It is older, darker, strategic. It's the silence of someone who knows they've been misunderstood their entire life, and has stopped trying to explain. Nostradamus wrote of this in a letter never published during his lifetime. He described Capricorn as the sign whose silence protects them, but also imprisons them. A paradox carved into the core of their soul. And he was right. Because what most people call emotional distance in Capricorn is not distance at all. It is defense. It is survival. It is wisdom born of betrayal. Capricorn learned young that speaking too much reveals too much. That vulnerability, for them, has rarely been met with safety. So they learned to build walls not out of stone, but out of silence. Walls so high, even love cannot climb them. A reality no one sees. You may see a Capricorn sitting quietly in a room, appearing calm, composed, unbothered. But inside, their mind is a war zone. A debate of duty versus desire. A flood of feelings they've never been taught how to express. This is the silence that punishes, not the one they offer to the world, but the one they inflict upon themselves. They may long to speak, to cry, to fall into someone's arms and say, "I'm tired." But they don't. Not because they're proud, but because they don't believe anyone would know what to do with their truth if they heard it. The curse of control. Capricorn's silence becomes a mechanism of control. By saying nothing, they remain unshaken, unpredictable. But the price? No one really knows them. And deep down, they know it. They become advisors to others. Shoulders to cry on. Pillars of logic and structure. But who is there when they break? Very few. Even when someone does care deeply, Capricorn may push them away. Why? Because vulnerability feels like chaos. And Capricorn was never allowed to live in chaos. They were raised, or cosmically wired, to bring order. Even at the cost of emotional starvation. A story from a modern-day Capricorn. A man named Elijah, a Capricorn born under Saturn's most difficult alignment, spent 20 years building a company from scratch. He never asked for help. He missed birthdays, holidays, even the birth of his own daughter. He said he was doing it for the future, for legacy. But in an interview later, when asked why he never told anyone he was struggling during those years, he paused and said, "I didn't think anyone would know what to do with my pain. I didn't want to explain it while trying to survive it." That is the silence of Capricorn. It is not empty. It is full of pain they believe no one else has the capacity to hold. The deeper truth. This prophecy from Nostradamus is not just about quiet voices or strong facades. It's about the spiritual wound of having to be the strong one for too long. And when Capricorn has carried that weight for years, decades, even, they begin to mistake silence for peace. But it's not peace. It's pressure. It's accumulated pain with no release. And it punishes them more than any enemy could. Because no one blames the silent one. No one checks on the strong one. And so Capricorn becomes invisible in their suffering, even to themselves. The life lesson. Capricorn must learn that silence is not strength if it erases your humanity. You can still be wise and vulnerable. You can still be composed and emotional. You can still climb mountains and let someone hold your hand. But first, you must choose to be seen, even just once, by someone worthy. Because silence may protect your power, but it can also bury your soul. And Nostradamus knew the greatest tragedies aren't always loud. Sometimes, they are lived quietly, and no one ever knows, until it's too late. Part 3: The Mask of the Dutiful Soul. From the moment Capricorn enters this world, something is expected of them. They are the child who grows up too fast. The sibling who never complains. The friend who never asks for help. The partner who always holds it together. They carry themselves with a calm certainty, as if they were born knowing what needs to be done. And so, the world responds in kind. You're so mature. You always have it under control. You don't need anyone, do you? But Nostradamus warned. The face the world praises is not the face Capricorn wears inside. The origin of the mask. Capricorn learns early that strength earns safety. That reliability earns respect. That feelings, if expressed too openly, invite chaos or disappointment. And so they begin to construct the mask slowly, quietly, piece by piece. A smile when they want to scream. A nod when they want to cry. A perfectly delivered "I'm fine" when their entire world is burning inside. This isn't deception. It's adaptation. They believe that being the strong one is the only role they're allowed to play. Because the moment they let the mask slip, people panic or worse, pull away. So they hold it tighter, even when it suffocates them. The cost of constant duty. The prophecy Nostradamus left behind in fragments speaks of souls who forget their original name, because they've worn their duty for so long that they believe it is who they are. He called it the armor that becomes skin. This is the danger for Capricorn. When you live for responsibility, you slowly die to everything else. Pleasure feels like guilt. Rest feels like weakness. Joy feels unproductive. So they push forward, endlessly, never pausing long enough to ask, who am I without my work? Who am I when no one needs me? The answer terrifies them, because it often feels like nothing. A personal case. A woman named Joanne, a Capricorn in her 50s, shared this in a quiet group therapy circle. She said, "My whole life, I've been the provider, the organizer, the one who shows up no matter what. But last year, after my divorce and both kids left for college, I sat in my kitchen and realized I didn't know what I liked to eat. I'd spent so long feeding others, I forgot to taste life for myself." This is what Nostradamus foresaw. A soul so defined by what it gives, it forgets how to receive. A heart so devoted to carrying the weight for others, it never dares to put any of it down. The inner war. What happens when the mask becomes permanent? Capricorn becomes a stranger to themselves. They know how to manage everything except their own needs. They become dependable but distant. Wise but emotionally malnourished. Loved but never deeply known. And all the while, they tell themselves they're fine, because admitting otherwise would feel like failure. But Nostradamus wrote clearly in his hidden codex, there is no honor in wearing a mask that silences your soul. The life lesson. Capricorn, your loyalty to duty is sacred, but you are not a role. You are not a performance. You are not the expectations others placed upon you when you were too young to say no. You are a living, breathing, emotional being. And your worth is not in what you produce, but in who you are when you stop producing. The real you deserves to be seen. The prophecy warns. If you do not take off the mask willingly, life will eventually tear it from you. So choose your moment, before the weight of duty becomes a silence you can never escape. Part 4: The Obsession with Time. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the planet of time, karma, and structure. But Nostradamus believed it went deeper than planetary alignment. He once wrote in a coded passage, there is a sign that feels every second as a sentence, every hour as a debt, every year as a test. And that sign is Capricorn. For most people, time is a river. But for Capricorn, it is a ticking bomb. Time as a blessing and a curse. Capricorns are meticulous planners. They think in decades, not days. They save when others spend. They build when others drift. It's admirable, powerful, even noble. But beneath it all is something darker. A quiet, gnawing fear that time is running out. That they must accomplish something great before it's too late. They often don't know where this fear comes from. Only that it's been there, as long as they can remember. This is the silent curse of Saturn. It gifts Capricorn with endurance, but ties it to a clock they can never stop hearing. A life of calculated moments. Capricorns are rarely impulsive. Every decision is weighed. Every move is calculated. Every emotion is postponed until it fits into the plan. But what happens when you live your life like a blueprint? You forget what it feels like to wander, to be surprised, to laugh without checking your schedule first. This is the prophecy Nostradamus feared. The Capricorn who masters time may one day wake to find that time has mastered them. They look around and suddenly they are 30, 40, 60. And all the moments they delayed for the sake of the future, they're gone. Joy postponed becomes joy lost. A true story from a hospice room. A nurse once shared a conversation with a dying man in his 70s, a successful CEO and lifelong Capricorn. He had built empires, mentored hundreds, and left behind wealth that would last generations. But as he lay in the quiet of his final days, he whispered, "I kept saying I'd rest later. I thought love could wait. I thought peace would come once the work was done. But work never ends, and now time's up." That was the last thing he said before falling asleep for the final time. Why this matters? Capricorn doesn't fear death. They fear waste. Wasting potential. Wasting opportunity. Wasting time. So they fill their days with structure. They cling to calendars like lifeboats. And they often forget that time is not just a measurement, it's also a gift. A gift meant to be lived, not just managed. The life lesson. Capricorn, your awareness of time is a superpower. But only if it serves your soul, not strangles it. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to play. You are allowed to take a breath that doesn't lead to achievement. Because if every second is spent preparing for the future, you will miss the only moment that's ever been real, this one. Time can be your ally, but if you let fear drive your planning, you will arrive at every milestone, too exhausted to celebrate. And Nostradamus warned, the price of a wasted life is not failure, it is regret. Part 5, The Forbidden Peak of Ambition. Nostradamus once wrote of a peak that very few souls are permitted to see. A peak not found in the mountains of the earth, but in the mountains within the soul. He called it the Forbidden Summit. And he warned, the Capricorn who reaches it may never descend the same. Ambition, for most people, is a tool, a spark to ignite movement. But for Capricorn, it is not optional. It is instinct. It is embedded in the code of their existence. And it does not rest. The drive that never stops. Capricorn wakes with goals already whispering in their mind. Even when they win, they don't celebrate for long. There is always a next level. Always a higher climb. Always one more proof that they are enough. This is not ego. It's survival. They believe, often unconsciously, that their worth is tied to their progress. To stop climbing would be to invite collapse. To pause would be to question everything they've built. So they keep moving. Even when their body aches. Even when their heart is tired. Even when no one else is watching. The hidden cost of success. But Nostradamus warned. The summit Capricorn seeks will require offerings not of gold, but of the soul. Ambition demands a price. And Capricorn, without even realizing it, will pay it in silence. They will sacrifice relationships. They will neglect their health. They will trade moments of peace for plans, and moments of love for leverage. Sometimes, they believe that once they arrive, they will reclaim what they lost. But often, by the time they get there, what they lost is no longer waiting. A cautionary tale. A well-known story in business circles tells of a Capricorn-born tech founder who rose to the top by 35. He had the accolades, the empire, the legacy. But when interviewed by a journalist who asked what he was most proud of, he responded with a long silence. Then he said, "I think I traded my 20s, my friends, and my sleep for this. And I'm not sure it was a fair trade." That confession never made it to print. But those close to him say it was the first time he questioned the very mountain he had spent his life climbing. The dark side of the peak. Capricorn's ambition doesn't just shape their career, it shapes their worldview. They begin to see people not as companions, but as distractions. Love becomes a luxury they believe they can't afford. Peace becomes a threat to momentum. And slowly, the mountain they thought would bring freedom begins to cage them. Nostradamus saw this as the most dangerous moment in Capricorn's journey. Because once the summit is reached, the silence at the top becomes deafening. And if they do not know who they are beyond their accomplishments, they risk discovering that they've built a kingdom, only to feel like a stranger within it. The life lesson. Ambition is sacred. It has built empires. It has changed the course of history. And in the heart of Capricorn, it burns like divine fire. But even divine fire must be honored with balance. Capricorn must ask, is this mountain calling my soul forward, or away from it? Because ambition without awareness becomes obsession. And obsession, unchecked, will consume even the strongest among us. Nostradamus warned, when you arrive at the summit, and no one is left beside you, you will understand that the cost of greatness is not always worth the silence it brings. Choose your mountain wisely, and climb with your heart, not just your will. Part 6, The Coldness of Calculated Love. There is a question often whispered in relationships with Capricorn. Do they really love me, or just find me useful? Nostradamus, in his hidden journals, warned of a love that feels more like a strategy than a surrender. He called it the cold fire, a kind of love that burns, but never openly, a devotion that functions, but rarely flows. And in his notes on the sign of Capricorn, he wrote, "They do not love by accident. They love with reason. And reason does not always allow warmth." Why Capricorn loves differently. Capricorn does not fall recklessly into love. They approach it as they do everything else. With caution. With discipline. With long-term vision. To them, love is not just an emotion, it is a responsibility. A role. A sacred contract. And so, before they offer their heart, they ask questions that others don't. Does this person make sense for my future? Can I build with them? Will they distract me from my mission? If the answer isn't clear, they hesitate. If the answer is no, they retreat, no matter how much they feel. This is not cruelty. It's self-preservation. Capricorn has learned that misplaced love can derail entire lifetimes. But Nostradamus warned, in choosing love only when it's safe. Capricorn risks never tasting what love feels like when it's real. A real example. A Capricorn woman named Eliza once shared her story on a late-night radio show. She was with a man for 10 years, loyal, respectful, and aligned with her plans. They bought a home, built a life. But she admitted something the night after he left her. "I don't think I ever showed him the depth of my love. I thought showing emotion would make me lose control. So I stayed composed, efficient, strong. But now, I'm strong and alone." Her voice didn't tremble, but the silence between her words did. The ice that forms over time. When Capricorn enters love, they give stability, not sparks. They show up. They protect. They build. But affection is often filtered through control. They may plan vacations instead of surprises, write checks instead of poems, fix problems instead of sitting in the storm with you. To some partners, this feels cold. To Capricorn, it feels safe. But love that never risks vulnerability becomes a partnership, not a connection. And over time, the one they love may begin to feel like a piece in their empire, not a piece of their heart. Why this happens? Capricorn fears emotional chaos. They've seen what love out of control can do in their childhood, in others, or even in themselves. So they trade passion for predictability, romance for responsibility, feeling for function. And Nostradamus warned, the Capricorn who calculates love will wake one day to find it gone, not in anger, but in silence. Because love that is not felt cannot be sustained. And love that is only managed will one day slip away unnoticed. The life lesson. Capricorn, you are brilliant at building what lasts. But some of the most powerful things in life are not meant to be controlled, only experienced. Love is one of them. You don't need to be reckless to be real. You don't need to lose yourself to feel deeply. You don't need to plan every heartbeat to be safe. Sometimes, love isn't logical. Sometimes, it just is. And if you wait until it makes sense, you may find that it's already moved on, looking for someone who lets it in. Let your heart speak, even if your mind disagrees. Because what your soul craves is not just someone to build with, but someone to be fully seen by. Part 7, The Prison of Control. Of all the secrets Nostradamus uncovered about Capricorn, perhaps none is more quietly dangerous than this. Control. Not the control that dominates with noise. Not the control that threatens with force. But the kind that moves in silence. That calculates. That anticipates. That controls so subtly, you forget it's there. He wrote, Capricorn builds kingdoms not with fire, but with structure. Not with war, but with orchestration. And within that mastery lies a cage they do not see, until it's too late. Control as a way of life. To Capricorn, control is not about dominance, it's about safety. A chaotic life feels dangerous. So they build routines, rules, rituals. They know what time they'll wake up, what time they'll eat, when they'll rest, and when they'll rise again. They don't leave room for accident. They don't rely on chance. They prepare, they plan, they position themselves so well that failure becomes almost impossible. And that's exactly the problem. Because the moment something unpredictable happens, they feel the world spinning. And worse, they feel themselves unraveling. The invisible prison. Here's the great paradox. Capricorn gains power through control, but loses freedom in the process. They begin to say no to things that don't fit their timeline. They avoid people who are too emotional, too erratic, too unstructured. They stay in situations they've outgrown simply because it fits their plan. At first, it feels like maturity, but over time, it becomes confinement. They are no longer living life. They are managing it. A story from a life unfolding. A Capricorn man named Leo once described his 20s like this. I had everything on paper. A career, savings, a house by 30. But when I turned 31, I realized I hadn't taken a risk since I was 18. I didn't know what I liked anymore. I only knew what I could control. He said it calmly. But beneath his words was a grief not for what he'd lost, but for what he never allowed himself to feel. The shadow of perfectionism. Capricorn believes they must earn everything. Rest must be earned. Joy must be earned. Even softness must be justified. They don't allow themselves to be messy, to fail, to feel something they can't explain. And so, they wear control like armor. But Nostradamus warned, a soul too armored forgets the warmth of wind, and a life too planned forgets the beauty of surprise. Capricorn thinks they are protecting themselves, but in reality, they may be protecting themselves from life itself. The life lesson. Capricorn, your structure is sacred. It is what makes you a builder of worlds. But even the most powerful architect must learn to open a window and let in what cannot be planned. Control without softness becomes tyranny, even when it's self-directed. You don't have to control everything. You don't have to protect yourself from the unknown, because not all unpredictability is danger. Some of it is magic. Let yourself dance once without knowing the rhythm. Let yourself love once without knowing the outcome. Let yourself fall, not to break, but to rise differently. Because sometimes, the very thing you fear losing control to, is the very thing that sets you free. Part 8, The Warrior's Loneliness. The world sees Capricorn as strong, unshakable, strategic. The one who carries burdens, meets deadlines, and holds the structure when everyone else is falling apart. But there is a truth Nostradamus wrote in the margin of his lesser-known manuscripts, a sentence barely noticed by scholars but impossible to forget once seen. The one who stands alone at the top, often never meant to be alone at all. Capricorn was never designed to be isolated. But strength has a price. And the warrior who wins every battle often returns home to no one waiting. Why the strong are left behind. Capricorn's strength is not theatrical. They don't cry out. They don't beg. They don't crumble in front of others. Instead, they carry. And because they carry so much, so well, people stop asking if they need help. Over time, Capricorn becomes less of a person and more of a pillar, a role, a function. And eventually, even those who love them forget. Behind all that stability, there is a human soul. A soul that longs to be seen, held, heard. A quiet kind of grief. There's a grief inside Capricorn that rarely has words. Not for what they've lost, but for what they've never let themselves receive. Moments of softness, late-night vulnerability, the freedom to fall apart without shame. They don't just miss connection, they miss permission to not be the strong one for once. But they fear what will happen if they ever put down their armor. So they keep walking. And the higher they go, the lonelier it gets. A personal reflection. A Capricorn client once said in therapy, "I walk into a room, and people expect me to lead. They expect me to fix it. They say, 'You always have it together.' But no one ever asks, 'What does holding it together cost you?'" She paused, and then added, "I don't think I've ever told anyone how tired I am. Because I don't think they'd believe me." That's the warrior's loneliness. It's not that no one loves them. It's that no one knows how to love them, because they never show where they're bleeding. Why this matters? Loneliness doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like success, like leadership, like calm. Capricorn is surrounded by people, co-workers, friends, even family, and yet often feels emotionally isolated. Why? Because they believe they have to earn closeness. That softness must come after achievement. That they must arrive before they can receive. But Nostradamus warned, if a soul waits to feel worthy before receiving love, it may walk eternity alone. The life lesson. Capricorn, you don't have to prove anything to deserve connection. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be soft. You are allowed to ask someone to sit beside you, not because you are weak, but because you are human. You've spent your life carrying others. But let this prophecy remind you, even warriors need places to rest. Even architects need a hand to hold. Even the mountain goat needs warmth when the snow falls. Your strength is legendary, but your willingness to be seen in your loneliness, that is where your real power begins. Part 9, The Unforgiving Memory. Capricorn doesn't forget. They don't forget the wound. They don't forget who caused it. And more importantly, they don't forget how it felt. While others move on, Capricorn stores every detail, every moment, every lesson like a blueprint etched in the walls of their mind. To the outside world, this appears as strength, resilience, awareness, discipline. But Nostradamus saw something deeper and darker. He called it the archive of ice. A vault within the Capricorn soul where memories do not age, do not fade, do not soften. He wrote, Capricorn remembers not with bitterness, but with precision. And that precision can heal, or it can become a silent war that never ends. Why Capricorn remembers everything? Capricorn has a mind wired for cause and effect. They learn quickly what leads to pain. They remember who betrayed their trust. They catalogue every mistake, theirs and others. But this isn't revenge. It's defense. They carry their memories as weapons and warnings, because they've learned that forgetting too soon invites harm. So they build internal systems to ensure that doesn't happen again. They remember to survive. The hidden cost of perfect memory. But here's the paradox. In remembering everything, Capricorn loses something vital, the ability to heal. When a wound never fades, it never closes. And when trust is never restored, relationships remain half alive. Capricorn may still show up. They may continue to help, to work, to lead. But deep down, they may still be reliving a moment from 5 years ago. A sentence someone said. A promise someone broke. A betrayal they never spoke aloud. And that memory, it guides their choices today, even if no one knows it. A story from a closed journal. A Capricorn writer once shared this line in an unpublished memoir. "I forgive, but my heart keeps a copy. Not to punish, but to never be unprepared again." That is the unforgiving memory. It doesn't scream. It doesn't seek revenge. It simply remembers. And in that remembering, it slowly hardens the heart. When memory becomes armor, Capricorn may say, "It's fine." They may act as if they've moved on. But they don't forget who didn't show up when it mattered. They don't forget who used their silence against them. They don't forget the time they needed softness and only received coldness in return. So they adapt. They become more selective, more distant, more reserved. And while that may protect them, it also isolates them. Because no one is perfect. And if no one is ever allowed to be human again in Capricorn's memory, then Capricorn may never fully love again. The life lesson. Capricorn, your memory is a gift. It keeps you wise. It keeps you alert. It has made you the guardian of your own story. But memory without mercy becomes a cage. It turns you into a warden of wounds, never letting them rest. You don't have to forget to heal. But you do have to soften. Let the past inform you, not define you. Let your experiences shape you, but don't let them close you. Because the moment you allow one sacred moment of trust again, one honest forgiveness, the weight of 1,000 memories begins to lift. And you realize, you were never supposed to carry them all alone. Part 10, The Face Behind the Throne. Power wears many faces. Some shout to be seen. Others rise through charm or chaos. But Capricorn builds empires without needing applause. They do not crave the spotlight. They install the spotlight and choose where it points. Nostradamus once referred to Capricorn as the ruler who does not sit on the throne, but moves the throne itself. And in his hidden pages, he warned, "Beware the one who speaks little, but listens long. For that one shapes nations without ever raising their voice." The strategic mind. Capricorn understands systems. They can look at chaos and immediately begin structuring it. In conversation, they listen for motive, not just meaning. In relationships, they observe long before committing. In leadership, they pull strings quietly, often long before others even realize there's a game being played. They are not manipulators. They are architects. They design futures. They plant ideas and let others believe those ideas were their own. They move chess pieces, not out of ego, but because they know where the board is headed. That is the face behind the throne. Quiet, composed, unseen, but essential. A real-world example. In politics, in business, in art, there are always names you know, and names you don't. Capricorn is often the latter. They are the advisor behind the leader, the financier behind the innovation, the strategist behind the movement. And yet, without them, nothing would move. As one Capricorn CEO once said in an anonymous interview, "I don't need my name on the building. I own the building." That's not arrogance. That's design. The danger of invisibility. But here lies the danger Nostradamus warned of. When you build power without being seen, you also risk never being understood. People may trust your outcomes, but not your heart. They may follow your lead, but never ask how you feel. They may benefit from your vision, without knowing it was your vision. And over time, this wears on the soul. Capricorn begins to wonder, do they respect me or just need me? Do they follow me because they see me or because I'm useful? The lack of visibility becomes a spiritual hunger. And one day, they may wake to find that in mastering control, they lost connection. A cosmic paradox. Capricorn came to this world to build. Not just buildings or businesses, but foundations that others can stand on. But what happens when the builder is never invited to live in the home they created? They stand outside, watching others thrive inside systems they constructed. And they begin to feel like a ghost in the palace they designed. Nostradamus described this as the architect's sorrow. The pain of knowing everything works, but never being known as the one who made it so. The life lesson. Capricorn, your strength lies in what you can create behind the scenes. But that does not mean you must remain unseen. You deserve to be known not just for your outcomes, but for your essence. You can lead and still be loved. You can build and still be believed in. You can shape the world and still be recognized as part of it. Because power that is never acknowledged becomes a burden. Let yourself be seen, not for ego, but for connection. The world already benefits from your guidance. Now let someone walk beside you, not as a subject to your strategy, but as a witness to your soul. Part 11, The Burnt Offerings of Love. There is a sacred altar in every Capricorn's life. But unlike the altars of religion or ritual, this one is hidden. It is built from ambition, fueled by duty, and often fed by the quiet sacrifice of love. Nostradamus called it the fire of offering that does not ask permission. He warned that Capricorn, in their quest to build something greater than themselves, would unknowingly place their most tender relationships on this altar one by one. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. The unseen trade. Capricorn does not destroy love intentionally. They simply prioritize purpose. They tell themselves, I'll come back to this relationship when things are more stable. I'll rest when I've achieved this goal. They'll understand why I'm doing this eventually. But days become months. Months become years. And love, left waiting at the door, quietly withers. One day, Capricorn looks up from their mountain of success and finds no one left at the base. A true testimony. A Capricorn musician once said in an interview, I thought success would fill me. I gave everything to my work even when my partner begged me to slow down. I told her I was doing it for us. But the truth is, I was doing it so I wouldn't feel useless. Now she's gone, and I still don't feel full. That's the cost Capricorn rarely speaks about. Not money, not time, but connection lost in silence. The myth of delayed love. Capricorn often believes that love can wait. They tell themselves they'll return to it when the pressure lifts, when the empire is finished, when the goals are checked off, when the chaos quiets. But Nostradamus warned, there is no peace at the end of unchecked ambition. Only silence, and echoes of voices who once called your name with warmth. Love does not exist in a scheduled moment. It is a living thing. It needs presence, attention, and space to breathe. Capricorn, in managing everything, sometimes forgets this simple truth. You cannot pencil in a soul. The inner reckoning. The saddest part is, Capricorn rarely realizes what they've sacrificed until it's too late. And when they do, they don't grieve loudly. They grieve through work. They bury their heartbreak in routine. They turn loss into fuel. It is both admirable and tragic, because no one ever taught them how to receive love without first proving their worth. And so they give until love becomes ash. The life lesson. Capricorn, your mission is real. Your destiny is powerful. But not every part of you needs to be sacrificed to fulfill it. You are allowed to pause, not just to rest, but to feel. You are allowed to prioritize connection, not because it's strategic, but because it's sacred. You are allowed to say no to success, if it means saying yes to someone who holds your heart. Love is not the enemy of greatness. It is the only thing that makes greatness worth achieving. Let this prophecy be your reminder. Do not burn what makes you human, to build something that will never love you back. Part 12, The Curse of Unrest. There are souls who find peace when they arrive, when the goal is met, when the mountain is climbed. Capricorn is not one of them. Because for Capricorn, arriving is not peace, it is pressure. Pressure to begin again, to go further, to climb higher. Nostradamus called it the eternal unrest of Saturn's children. He believed that Capricorns are born not with a destination in mind, but with a burden, a deep, relentless pull that whispers, you are not done yet, even when they've done more than enough. Weimar KT can't rest. Capricorn's engine does not slow down naturally. Their nervous system has been wired, through life or karma, to function best in motion. Rest feels dangerous. Stillness feels foreign. And peace can feel like failure. This is the great irony. The very sign most associated with stability and order often feels the most unstable in their own quiet. When there are no tasks, no goals, no fires to put out, Capricorn starts to feel lost. A hidden truth. A Capricorn nurse once said in a private reflection, "I went on vacation for the first time in 5 years. 3 days in, I started to panic. Not because anything was wrong, but because nothing was wrong. I didn't know how to exist without fixing something." That is the curse of unrest. When stillness feels more threatening than struggle. The spiritual danger. This internal unrest is not just psychological, it's spiritual. It prevents Capricorn from celebrating the very success they work so hard for. It tells them, "You've earned this, but don't enjoy it too long. Others are catching up. You'll fall behind if you rest." This voice does not come from wisdom. It comes from fear. Fear of becoming irrelevant. Fear of becoming useless. Fear of losing identity the moment productivity stops. And Nostradamus warned, the soul that cannot rest, no matter how much it builds, will become a ghost in its own temple. The physical cost. Unrest doesn't just affect the spirit. It affects the body. Capricorn often ignores fatigue. They suppress emotion. They push through sickness, sadness, even heartbreak because there's work to do. Until one day, the body says, "Enough." And when that moment comes, Capricorn is often shocked. Because no one ever told them that rest is part of resilience. The life lesson. Capricorn, your drive is powerful. Your ability to endure is legendary. But endurance without pause becomes erosion. You are not a machine. You are not a strategy. You are not your schedule. You are a soul. And your soul does not only exist to produce. It also exists to feel, to breathe, to simply be. Let this be the prophecy that saves you from yourself. You do not have to wait until everything is perfect to deserve peace. You can rest, even when the world is still moving, even when your checklist isn't done, even when part of you whispers, "Not yet." Because if you never allow yourself to feel complete, you will spend your life achieving milestones that never matter, and missing moments that do. Part 13, The Legacy of Shadow. When people speak of legacy, they often mean wealth, property, success, reputation. But Nostradamus saw a different kind of legacy written in the bones of Capricorn. He called it the inheritance of the unseen. A legacy not built of concrete or currency, but of patterns, of silence, of beliefs passed down like sacred scripts no one ever questions. Capricorn, more than any other sign, leaves behind a structure. But not just for the world. For their children, their community, their bloodline. And sometimes, that structure is a gift. Other times, it's a cage. What you pass on without knowing. Capricorn leads by example. They don't speak of feelings, they model endurance. They don't preach about duty, they embody it. But what happens when that example becomes a burden for the next generation? When children learn that crying is weakness, that joy must be earned, that love is conditional upon achievement. Capricorn may not say those words, but they live them. And the people around them learn not from what they're told, but from what they observe. That is the shadow legacy. Not what you intended to pass on, but what you left behind in your silence. A story passed through 3 generations. There's a story of a Capricorn grandmother who raised 6 children alone. She worked 2 jobs, never complained, built a life from nothing. Her children admired her strength, but none of them ever felt close to her. Now grown, her granddaughter says, "We learned how to survive from her, but we didn't learn how to trust love, or how to rest, or how to be vulnerable without guilt. And we're all still figuring that out." This is not an accusation. It's a reflection. Capricorn gives so much, but sometimes they don't realize what they're withholding. The burden of being the first strong one. In many families, Capricorn is the first to break cycles. The first to rise out of poverty. The first to establish order. The first to take responsibility no one else would. They become the root system of a new lineage. But even root systems have shadows. They pass down resilience and rigidity, success and suppression. The very traits that made Capricorn powerful can become the very traits that haunt those who follow. And Nostradamus wrote, "A legacy without reflection becomes a mirror of unspoken wounds." Why this matters? Capricorn, you are here to build. But more than that, you are here to transform. Not just external systems, but ancestral ones. You were born into families, communities, or bloodlines that needed your structure. But that does not mean you must pass on every brick. You are allowed to revise the blueprint. You are allowed to teach strength and softness, order and spontaneity, discipline and joy. You are not here to simply repeat what was. You are here to create what's never been seen before. The life lesson. Your legacy is not just what you achieve. It's how people feel when they stand in the house you built. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Ask yourself, does my child feel free in the shadow of my ambition? Do those I love feel seen beneath the weight of my silence? Will the structure I leave behind help them fly, or only help them survive? You have the power to shape generations. Not by being perfect, but by being aware. The shadow legacy ends with you. The moment you choose consciousness over habit, presence over duty, truth over appearance. That is the real empire. Not what you leave behind, but what you liberate before you go. Part 14, The Prophecy of Rebirth. Some signs collapse when broken. Others heal quietly. But Capricorn transforms. Nostradamus once wrote in a veiled letter, hidden from the public for centuries. The Capricorn soul is not buried by misfortune, it is reforged by it. Each fall is a ritual. Each heartbreak, a tempering fire. And each ending, the beginning of a more dangerous version of themselves. This is the prophecy of rebirth. Capricorn does not rise like the phoenix in a blaze of flames. They rise in silence, cold, composed, unshakable. And very few people realize they are no longer the same. How the rebirth begins. Capricorn's fall doesn't always happen publicly. It's rarely dramatic. More often, it happens alone. In the late hours. In quiet realizations. In the painful silence after betrayal, failure, or loss. They won't announce the breaking. They'll keep working. Keep functioning. Keep smiling with tired eyes. But deep inside, something is dying. And something else is being born. The inner transformation. The rebirth of Capricorn is not about revenge. It is about evolution. When they are broken, they don't rebuild who they were. They build someone they've never been. Softer emotions are removed. Weak links are severed. Illusions are burned to ash. And what remains? Clarity, discipline, power, but also distance. Because every rebirth hardens them. Not cruelly, but necessarily. They learn who can be trusted, who cannot, and most importantly, who they are when everything else is gone. A true moment of rebirth. A Capricorn entrepreneur once lost everything: her business, her partner, her name. She disappeared for 2 years. No interviews, no social media, just silence. When she returned, she didn't talk about what happened. She launched a new brand, 10 times more powerful than the last. She led without apology. She smiled less, but saw more. Someone once asked her privately, "How did you come back from all that?" Her answer was simple. "I didn't come back. I came back different." That is the prophecy of rebirth. Capricorn doesn't return to the world. They remake it. The spiritual cost. But this transformation is not without pain. Each rebirth comes with a price. Less vulnerability, less softness. Fewer people allowed into the inner sanctum. Because Capricorn remembers who stood by them during the breaking, and who didn't. And they do not forget. But they also do not explain. They simply evolve beyond explanation. Nostradamus warned, the reborn Capricorn is revered, but rarely touched. Admired, but rarely held. for they have traded comfort for clarity. The life lesson. Capricorn, your ability to rise from destruction is not of this world. It is ancestral, celestial, sacred. But be mindful of what you leave behind in the fire. You do not need to burn your softness to rebuild your strength. You do not need to erase your past to claim your future. And you do not need to become untouchable to be unbreakable. Yes, your rebirth is your power. But your humanity, that is your legacy. Let this be your awakening. You were never meant to rise only colder. You were meant to rise wiser, deeper, truer. Because the world doesn't need another perfect version of you. It needs the real one. Part 15, the destiny they never chose. Some souls are born light, free, untethered, meant to explore, to dance, to discover. Capricorn was not. Nostradamus, in one of his most obscure scrolls, wrote the following. There is one among the 12 who is not born for comfort, but for command, whose path is not selected by desire, but by duty. And though they may not ask for it, the weight will find them. He was speaking of Capricorn, the sign that never quite belonged to youth, or to leisure, or to wandering. Because Capricorn belongs to something older, something heavier, something destined. When you're born into burden, ask any Capricorn, and you'll find a pattern. They felt pressure before they had language for it. Responsibility before they understood what responsibility even meant. A sense that they had to hold it all together for the family, for the team, for the system. No one told them to. No one needed to. They just knew. If I don't do it, no one will. If I fall apart, everything falls apart. If I stop, everything stops. Capricorn doesn't wear this like pride. They wear it like armor. Because there was never another option. The choice they never got to make. Most people choose their path. Capricorn was handed one. Not by force, but by cosmic design. Born into systems that needed stabilizing. Families that needed someone grounded. Futures that needed architects. And they said nothing. They simply began. While others chased dreams, Capricorn built foundations. While others waited to be chosen, Capricorn made themselves necessary. Not because they were eager, but because the structure wouldn't hold without them. And they knew it. The spiritual cost of being the one who holds. The burden of destiny is not visible. Capricorn does not walk around announcing their sacrifice. But behind every success story, every leadership role, every mountain climbed, is someone who never truly knew what it felt like to be carried. Because they were always the one doing the carrying. Nostradamus warned, when a soul is born into duty, it forgets the taste of desire. And that is the quiet sorrow in many Capricorn hearts. Not that they couldn't reach the top, but that they never had the chance to ask themselves if that's where they wanted to go in the first place. The life lesson. Capricorn, you may not have chosen this path, but you are walking it with extraordinary grace. Still, hear this now. You are more than your strength, more than your discipline, more than your ability to endure. You are a soul. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to say, this is too much. Destiny is not a punishment. It is an invitation. Not to abandon yourself, but to awaken yourself. Yes, you are here to build. Yes, you are here to carry. But you are also here to feel, to heal, to choose. And the most sacred choice you will ever make is to carry only what belongs to you. Let the rest go. Call to action. If this message reached something deep inside you, if you've ever felt like your path was heavier than most, if you know what it means to be strong and tired and still keep going, then this space was made for you. Subscribe to Zodiac Secrets Revealed, where your sign is not just a label, it's a language, where your pain has purpose, and where your power finally has a place to rise. Because this isn't the end of your story. It's just the moment you finally understood why you were chosen to live it.